you'd die, or you'd starve to death. But has Britain failed for war signings, or not preparing on time, or if a war does happen, then we've got to fight. So, like it or lump it, one day you have to face the facts. Some people may run away and go to a different country because of war, so they'll have to fight. But like I say, let's see what this guy says in there. I mean, some people don't want to fight, but there's some countries that have to. Because of the things going on with Russia and Ukraine and Gaza and fucking hell, Gaza. Fucking hell, my brain's gone now. I was just thinking of some Gaza, Iraq, Israel. That's the one, yeah, Israel. You just don't know with NATO and everything else. I'll just keep it at that because I'm quite tired today, as you can see. It's getting a bit late now. It's only 12 at night time, and I want to get this video done. As you can see that, quite late. Some people say it may be early, but anyway, I've got to put this video on and see what you think about it. When you get tired, you lose your words, don't you?
Difficult geopolitical backdrop. I mean, that's just the reality of it. We've got threats from all around us. We've got a war going on in the Middle East, which we just discussed. We've got an ongoing war in Ukraine, which started a couple of years ago now. We've also got increasing tensions in China, with Taiwan, also ongoing problems with Russia, and an increasingly belligerent Iran. So we are facing a totally different backdrop to what we have been used to in the post-Cold War era. And this is very interesting because there is a piece out in the Telegraph today, and there's a piece by James Heapy, who was a defence minister who resigned from the government just a couple of weeks ago. And he says a number of things, but one of the pieces that talks about his piece, says this: UK has failed to prepare itself for war. Warn former defence ministers, not just James Heapy, but also Ben Wallace, the former defence secretary. Now, it says this: Britain has failed to prepare itself for war as a whole nation endeavour. Former defence ministers have warned in a stark wake-up call to the government. James Heapy, the former Armed Forces Minister, has revealed that only Whitehall officials from the Ministry of Defence bothered to take part in an exercise to find out how the country would be governed from the UK's wartime bunker. 2 weeks after leaving office, the Tory MP and former army officer urged ministers to prepare for conflict. He called on them to put plans in place for commandeering land for cultivation to feed the nation, and requisitioning consumer electronics for weapons. His comments were backed up by Ben Wallace, the former Defence Secretary, who said that there were too many people in the government relying on hoping that the current instability would go away. Mr. Wallace, who led the MOD until August last year, said it was time, and I quote, to blow the dust off manuals drawn up in the Cold War on how Britain would be run during wartime. Now, the criticism comes as the government is belatedly reviewing its contingency plans for an all-out war against the backdrop of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. But it's very interesting because Grant Shapps has also been saying that we are living in a pre-war age only a few weeks ago. And Mr. Heapy, who I just mentioned, warned that Britain's preparedness did not match the scale of the threat, adding, and I quote, "War is a whole nation endeavour, and to be frank, the UK, in the UK, we are a very long way behind." Now, it is an election year. It is an election year, and I think it's all too easy for us to sit back as armchair generals and just say, well, this is all the government, for the government to deal with. We know that the government has finite resources, and we are all electors. We're going to have votes at some point. It might be October, November, but it might be sooner if Rishi Sunak can't control the increasingly fractious rebels on his backbenches who might want to topple him before. So we could have an election at some point, and we are going to have one in the coming months. We know that. And given that backdrop, I want to understand from you, as a voter, how much of a priority is war preparedness for you? How much of a priority is war preparedness for you? 0345 6060 You can text on 84850 or ask Alexa to send a comment to LBC. I'll give you my thoughts on this in a moment. But I'm asking you this because it's too easy for us to sit back and just say, oh, it's all the government's responsibility. It's not really. If you think it's an important issue, I think that the politicians would respond and elevate it up the political agenda. So I want to hear your thoughts on this. Get your calls in now. Joining me to discuss this is General Sir Richard Barrons, former senior British Army officer who has previously served as one of the 6 chiefs of staff leading the armed forces between 2013 and 2016. Very good afternoon to you, General Sir Richard. What do you make of James Heappey coming out and saying that Britain is not really ready for war? The ministers couldn't even really turn up to an exercise to test the bunkers.
Well, I'm delighted he's saying it. I'm delighted that Ben Wallace, his former boss, says it as well. And it is so that the United Kingdom, not just in the government, but across civil society and industry, hasn't had to think about the business of a war that would touch on our survival, on our security and our prosperity and our values since the end of the Cold War, which is 1990, so well beyond the memory of many. And the fact that we have now arrived back in circumstances where we have to deal with that kind of threat is not something we asked for. It's going to be very difficult because our economy is not thriving. We want to spend our money on other things. And frankly, we've no experience of dealing with this kind of thing in government or across the civil service or indeed parts of the armed forces. But we're still going to have to deal with it, or we risk some potentially terrible outcomes.
Now, James Heappey mentions in his piece that when he went to Sweden, I think it was, that over there, his opposite number showed him a leaflet that they actually give people to prepare for war in terms of what you need to buy, the kind of goods you need to do, basic precautions you need to take. If this is going to be a whole country endeavour, what, General Sir Richard, do you think we need to be doing? Because it's not just about spending more money on defence, that's part of it, but it's also about educating people about the risk threat and actually inculcating a sense of preparedness in the nation, which is not an easy thing to do.
No, it's difficult and it will take time. And I think the first thing is if everyone listening to this programme took a long, hard look at what it feels like to be Ukrainian today. That's what war for survival feels like. And it becomes obvious then it's not just a matter for getting the armed forces right. It's about how the whole of society and government and industry bind in behind a national effort. And to do that would require a programme of education and training and resources. And what I think is interesting, and you described it, is those countries that are next to Russia, that feel the fear just out of geography and history rather more, they are already down this road. And you may have heard Donald Tusk, the new leader of Poland, saying this is the place we need to be just last week. And we somehow have not yet taken those steps.
Now, what do you make of Jens Stoltenberg? Because obviously the NATO Secretary General, NATO celebrated its 75th anniversary. There was a meeting of the NATO countries, defence ministers and other representatives in Brussels only a few days ago, saying that the world was now in a much more dangerous, more unpredictable and much more violent place than it has been, and that there is an authoritarian alliance giving each other practical support that is more and more aligned. What are your thoughts around this? Because it's certainly true, is it not, that we are moving into a much more transactionally driven world. There are many non-aligned countries that are not going to ally to the so-called rules-based order that the West promulgates. It's a tougher neighbourhood out there.
Yes, it is, and we've been moving into this space since at least 2014 when Russia invaded Crimea. And one way to look at it is we now live in a world where liberal democracy, led by the US, so big question mark over how much the US is going to pay the bill now, led by the US, confronting the autocratic capitalists led by China, but with Russia and countries like North Korea and Iran definitely in that fold. And then a whole lot of the rest of the world in Africa and Asia, wondering which side to back. Do they need to back a side? And it's not obvious to them. They should back us.
That's true. I mean, what do you make of the threat where you've got people like India, for example, and I saw the Indian foreign minister at the Munich Security Conference just a few weeks ago, when he was asked directly by Rula Khalaf at the FT, well, loads of people are putting sanctions on Russia, not buying their oil, but you still are. And he said, well, smart allies offer smart choices and smart people make smart choices, subtext being, we'll do exactly what's in our interest, thank you very much. I mean, you've got India, you've got China now, you've got a détente in some ways between India and China, and you've got export trade going on between Russia and China at 240 billion last year, an increase of 20% on the previous year.
Yeah, this is so, and we have come out of a world where generally speaking, things went the way we, the West, led by the US, wanted them to go, whether that was security or in terms of our economy. That world is over. We lived in a multipolar world where our voice is going to be less. And the only way that we can protect our interest is, first of all, to bind with our partners in NATO. There's no affordable solution for the UK outside collective security arrangement, and to realise that we essentially have a choice. We either get back to doing deterrence better, which is the most important thing to do, and that means having credible armed forces and societies that are resilient. And it also means that we find a voice with our partners about how we want the world to work, or those bigger forces, frankly, in Asia, will decide how the world works, and our interests will be firmly a secondary consideration.
See what else is on this TV.
A sobering thought. Thank you very much indeed. That was General Sir Richard Barrett.
Right. It's not a great deal on there at the minute. Who knows? My feet. Feety feet. Yes, it's my feet. I'm just seeing what else is on the TV, but
Former senior British Army officer.
not really showing much in there, did he? Anyway, better go. Thank you for all joining me. I'll do more videos tomorrow. Take it easy. And see you next one. Peace. See you later.